Hello everyone, the Pokemon finalist back here again, and today for you guys I have another deck profile, this deck being actually an expanded deck in preparation for Philadelphia Regionals coming up in 2 weeks. Haven't done too much testing for expanded so far. I've done more standard, but this is a deck I actually put together and it's been working out quite nicely. In testing so far. This is the original list I've created, and I thought I would share it with you guys. This is kind of a deck I thought, it is a Darkrai Giratina deck. It's done great in standard, and I kind of thought, what if it were, somehow good in expanded, and I know there's, the speed Darkrai deck essentially just trying to use Dark Pulse Darkrai to do a lot of damage early on, but I kind of thought, what if I took it a step further and played Darkrai Giratina, with Giratina being kind of an answer to those Mega decks like Mega Rayquaza, Primal Groudon, and even Mega Manectric. So, without further ado, here's the deck list. Of course, the Darkrai split is 2 Dark Pulse Darkrai and a Dark Cloak Darkrai. Dark Pulse Darkrai, of course, being your main attacker. It just, obviously, you use cards like Max Elixir and Dark Patch, power up your Pokemon very quickly, and just dish out heavy chunks of damage with Dark Pulse, trying to take one-shots as quickly as possible. It's just the whole basis around Darkrai Giratina. You use the Giratina portion to lock out cards like Megas and decks that are based around Special Energy and even Tools and Stadiums, and you use the Darkrai portion of the deck to just take fast one-hit knockouts against decks that aren't weak against Giratina. So it is our main attacker, and of course there's the one Dark Cloak Darkrai. Night Spirit can come in handy occasionally, but it's really there to give our Pokemon free retreat so we can maneuver around the board easier. So that's our Darkrai split. And of course 2 Giratina. Chaos Wheel is just a great attack, and Giratina I think is going to become a better Pokemon because I think Groudon is actually a much better deck now. Of course, that Groudon really suffered against decks like Night March and Vespiquen. Vespiquen not only because of the weakness, but both of those decks together because they are non-EX decks that can dish out large chunks of damage and just trade favorably with Groudon. And both of those decks aren't really that reliant on abilities at the same time. So they kind of just overran Groudon, but now that Karen's going to be legal, both of those decks are kind of essentially dead. I mean, I don't want to call it too early, but Groudon will have a much better chance. And Groudon does have good matchups against decks like Yveltal, Turbo Darkrai, a lot of other Mega decks, and yeah, and it just overall is a great deck for this format, and I think Giratina will be a very good way to combat that. Of course, Renegade Pulse prevents Megas from damaging him, so just a quick Giratina I think can really just do a number on a Groudon deck. And of course, the main synergy with these two cards being Double Dragon not only powers up your Giratina EX, but it also adds 40 damage to Darkrai's attack. So this is a concept that's been used for quite a while now, maybe 6-7 months or so. And I kind of thought, what if I just transferred this over to expanded and tried it out with extra cards like Dark Patch and Getsis. So that's the Pokemon line, or that's the attacker line rather. Of course, our support Pokemon are 2 Shaman, 1 Jirachi, and a Hoopa. Hoopa obviously grabbing all of our attackers as well as usually one of the support Pokemon. Shaman just to draw cards early on, and Jirachi, this deck plays a lot of 1-of supporters, so just having the 1 Jirachi is always nice to just grab whichever one you need at the time, whether or not it's Getsis, and Delinquent, or even just a Sycamore. And of course, it may seem like there's a lot of dead Pokemon on our bench, but we do have Parallel City to be able to get rid of those, so it's not like they're going to have too many free prizes on the board throughout the game. And as for our supporter line, I'm just going to kind of lay them all out there. We have 4 Sycamore, just the main draw card. I want to have 4 because, it's great against item lock. Just, when you have one, you'll be able to keep going through your deck, and just great to have 4. I probably wouldn't play 3 because you really need to chain them against something like Trevenant or Seismitoad in order to stay in the game. And I always like starting with 1, since usually it is the supporter you want to start with in the opening turns of the game. And then our 1 of supporters, 1 N for disruption late game, 1 Lysander to pick off easy prizes like opposing Shamans or powering up Pokemon. 1 Getsus is kind of like, expanded's like staple, expanded standard as I like to call it. Having 1 is always great for decks like Keldeo Blastoise or anything heavily reliant on items to set up very quickly. 1 Colress just as heavy draw, a Delinquent as stadium control essentially, especially if your opponent does not expect it, you can sometimes get them down to 0 cards in hand, putting them in top deck mode. And of course the 1 Hex Maniac, since Greninja did just win Arizona Regionals, and we want to have a way to combat that deck. We get a quick Darkrai using Dark Pulse, and a couple chained Hex Maniacs can really keep us in the game and prevent them from taking too many prizes with Giant Water Shuriken before we knock out all of their Greninjas. So that's the supporter line. And of course 4 VS Seeker to go along with that, just to grab whatever supporter we need from the discard pile. I certainly would not play any lower than that. And it may seem like all these 1-ofs are really bad, but again, Jirachi can grab us whichever one we need in a pinch. So 4 Ultra Ball, you really just need 1 throughout the game, to be completely honest, because Hoopa's just going to set up your entire board. But in case it's prize, or you start with it, or you just want to discard excess cards, you got 4 Ultra Ball to set up and go about it that way. Onto the Energy Acceleration 4 Max Elixir, and I'm just going to kind of lay out the Dark Patch. 3 Dark Patch. This is kind of a tricky one. I would like to fit 4 Dark Patch, but I'm not really sure exactly what to cut right away. But you may wonder, why not 4 Dark Patch, 3 Max Elixir, since Dark Patch is a guaranteed thing. But I do like powering up Giratina as quickly as possible, and we do play a lot of Dark Energy, so usually Max Elixir won't miss, and it's kind of more consistent early on in case you can't discard a Dark Energy right away. But those are just a couple of the reasons. But again, something like a Gallade as well, or anything that would kind of be favorable against Darkrai, we want the Max Elixir as well. But again, if I can find the room for the 4th Dark Patch, I certainly will try it, but I'm not 100% sure what to cut. And at the same time, it is not always a playable card, since if you don't have a Dark in your discard pile, it doesn't do anything, and often you might end up discarding 1 early on. So there's just 3 Dark Patch for now. But again, our Energy Acceleration, we want to get energy into play as quickly as possible, to Dark Pulse for as much damage as possible, and just power up our attackers as well. 3 Trainer's Mail, just draw into our trainers, can get us 1 of supporters if we happen to see 1 we might like in the top 4, grabs us Ultra Ball, grabs us everything. Yeah, I would play a 4th, but of course there is always the space issue, and 3 is just, it's working just fine. 2 Fighting Fury Belt, extra HP is always nice for pretty much everything, and that 10 extra damage is of course always relevant. It's great for Giratina, knocking out something like Wobbuffet, or some 2-shotting something else with a belt, really anything along those lines. And of course the extra 40 HP is fantastic. But we also played 2 Muscle Band, Muscle Band being good because again, something like an opposing Darkrai, for example, or even possibly a Primal Groudon EX, anything where 10 damage is an awkward number for Darkrai to hit, Muscle Band is just, there to come in clutch and be able to get you a 1-hit knockout, or, yeah. So there is a split between those, and usually you'll end up with having 2 of each, you'll usually find the one you need at the right time. There's 2 Escape Rope, 2 just as a switching card, I don't actually play Keldeo because you'd need space for Keldeo and Floatstone, and you need the space on your bench. And I just found playing switching cards as well as a Dark Cloak, Darkrai for the retreating aspect just would play out better. And of course, Escape Rope can come in handy against, well, pretty much everything, but most importantly, something like Primal Groudon. And yeah, just another switching card. These are something where you could play Floatstone, you could play regular switch, or you could even play AZ. I am still trying to figure out something to cut for an AZ, but it's kind of up in the air for me right now. But that was initially what I had in the list, and it's worked out pretty well so far. Can also get around something like a Fright Night Eviltal and help you take a knockout with your tools, so available to you. One computer search, just kind of the best ace spec. There's nothing really else you'd play. It's just grabs you anything, and that helps keep you in the game. And really, at any point, you just need any one card, whether it's a double Dragon Energy or a one of Supporter or a Dark Patch or really anything. It just grabs you right away. 2 stadiums and 2 parallel city. Again, we have a lot of dead Pokemon, and we don't want to have those sitting on our bench because our opponent will easily be able to keep up with cards like Fright Night Eviltal, or even just, you know, Lysandering them and you know, trading evenly in the race where we knock out an EX, but they're also knocking out our EXs because they're such low HP. And of course, it is great against Mega Rayquaza EX with Giratina and Fighting Fear Belt, kind of just locking them out of the game. And can also come in handy against Seismitoad at the very least. One more thing I do want to note, another reason, of course, AZ would be good if we have ways of getting rid of these Pokemon off the bench, but of course if we start with it, it's kind of in an awkward position where we need to get it out of the active spot and need to get it off the bench eventually. So I will certainly be looking out for something like AZ or some way to pick up Pokemon. And onto the energy. Of course, we need lots of energy because our deck is very energy reliant. 10 Dark Energy, 4 Double Dragon, of course Double Dragon to power Giratina and to add more damage to Dark Pulse, and the 10 Dark because we want to hit it off the Max Elixir, and I would not play fewer than that. And of course, the advantage to this deck is if you do end up discarding Dark Energy off of, via Ultra Ball, Computer Search, or even Sycamore, you can always Dark Patch them into play, whereas in Standard, if you discard Dark Energy, it kind of is just strictly bad, because unless you're taking the turn off to Oblivion Wing, then it's just like, it just reduces your chances of hitting an energy off of Max Elixir. Whereas in this case, we can take advantage of having it both in our deck and in our discard pile, and it's beneficial to actually have a combination of both to maximize both of our item cards here. So yeah, that's the list. As of right now, it's been testing great, and I will certainly be tweaking this a little bit, and I will also be building a couple more decks for Expanded. I'm hearing a lot of hype of Mega Manectric, but of course there's such a wide array of decks out there, between Seismitoad decks and of course Groudon and Trevenant and Greninja. There's just so many different things that you can play, and I will certainly be building more of those, doing more deck reviews, and trying to get some battles as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope this was helpful, and stay tuned for more videos.